We're here on the grid for the Formula I Portuguese Grand Prix. On pole position, we have Matt for Neutrino, followed by Yui in the Blue Bull. Third place, Stephen. Fourth place, Kevin. Fifth place is... And away they go. Decent start from Matt. Yui on the outside. Looks to have had a slightly better getaway. Can she get around the outside into turn 1? And she does. Yui takes the lead. So it's Yui, followed by Matt. Turn 1. Will is up 1 place, as is Rory. Kevin has lost out. Izzy's also gained 2 places off the line. It's a good start for Tiamat. Our championship leader, Naifu, is down to 8. Further back, we've got Stuart, who has gained 4 places off the line. Let's have a look at that start from Stuart then. Very good getaway, especially compared to the Frozen Light in front. It's Max, who I believe goes on to lose 3 places. And then, oh, they all have to react to, I think, the Vanel in front slowing down. It's great. And Stuart just goes around the outside of all. Very quick reactions from him. So they're all beginning to spread out now as we get towards the end of lap 1. Yui leads. Second is Matt, now a full second behind. Close behind him is Stephen. And the main overtaking place on this track is down the start-finish. Very hard to figure out. Let's see whether Stephen can do it. He's got in the slipstream of Matt. Pulls to the inside. Does that thing again have the power to beat the Neutrino into turn 1? He's going to try. Matt has the outside line. Still side by side as they go through turn 2. And now into turn 3. Stephen will have the inside line, but he's not close enough. Matt holds the position for now. That's letting Yui get away, now with an over 2 seconds. Drop buckle in the Afonier. So they're down to 9th position. While Stuart is continuing to move up the order. Here's Greg trying to get past 9. And meanwhile, Matt's gone off, as has Kevin. Both of them are off the... And it seems like Kevin is stuck in the gravel. And that's going to drop him right to the back of the field. It's a disaster for the Dancing Donkey. How did that happen? Got Kevin coming through chicane. Oh, and he just loses the back end, it looks. Slides out. And here's Matt, under pressure from Stephen. Up. It's very, very easy to do. I think Stephen was always going to get past somewhere, but that's lost Matt a lot more places than he needed to. Because he didn't want to...
Watch out for debris. Watch out for debris.
Here's Stuart, and he hits the front wing, or rear wing of Greg. He's out of the race. Michael now going for a move on Matt. He has the inside. Matt holds it. Is Michael going to have a go into turn 3? Probably not. Michael will have to stay behind Matt for a while longer. These two now over 8 seconds off the lead. Further back, we have Alex in the Pentacorum. He seems to be holding up a bit of a train as well. Perhaps he's got heavy fuel. And meanwhile, a very impressive race from Kale in the Gotta Go Fast. This team I don't think has qualified for the first 2 season, but Kale is driving it in. Mia comes out the pits, repairing that damage. Greg is still getting his repaired. That's going to be a long stop. Rear wings take quite a bit of time to replace. It's going to be more than 10 seconds. As Greg goes a lap down, ruins of a good result for Vanel. Here's Michael, again trying to pass Matt. It's not working this time either. Not the easiest track to overtake at all. And Matt is doing a very good job holding that position, but he is losing a lot of time. I assume he's doing only one pit stop in this race. That's the reason for the fact that he's a bit slow at this stage. He's currently 11 seconds off the lead. If he drops back to like more than just over 20 seconds, then this strategy kind of hasn't worked. Of course, that mistake that he made definitely hasn't helped. And meanwhile, Yui has gone off. I think that... What happened here? It's the same place that Matt and Kevin went off. And it seems that Yui has made a similar mistake. And she is out of the race from the lead. So Stephen is now our race leader. That is yet another costly mistake from Yui. A driver who had promising pace last season, only to throw it away so many times. She's done it again here. Yui is out of the Portuguese Grand Prix as Matt has spun off again. Same place as last time. So, any chance of a good result from him is going out of the window as well. It's Stephen who leads now, followed by Will. Third place is Greg. No, actually, 19th place is Greg. He's a lap down. Third place is Rory, and fourth is Izzy. So, it's starting to look like a very good result for Tiamat. They had a good qualifying, both cars in the top 10. They've both moved forward. Of course, they've moved forward as a result of everyone else's mistakes, but half of the skill in Formula I is staying on when everyone else doesn't. And this kind of situation happens so often. Kale is now running in 6th, as Hisham seems to have some kind of technical problem. He's dropping back. Has he just made a mistake? And here is his mistake. Locks up into the hairpin. And he lets Keir and Alba go through. He still has a go. And here is Rory. Right. She's pulled ahead and she takes third into turn 1. The Tiamat's now both on the podium. Stephen leads by 1.5 seconds ahead of Will. Izzy 4 seconds further behind. Or 3 seconds further behind. 4 off the lead total. Then it's Rory, Michael, Kale, Alex, Keir, Alba, and Crystal. No one has pitted for a scheduled stop. We're expecting the first scheduled stops for the people that are 2-stopping soon, as Matt has made another mistake. That's what happened to Matt then. Runs wide at turn 1, like we saw Chris R and Greg do, with much more catastrophic results. Matt will continue without any damage, but he was looking in. After starting from pole position, this is not what he wanted. Here's Greg, trying to unlap himself from Will. This is not the distraction Will needs. He's trying to chase down Stephen. He's doing a very good job at doing. There's an argument to be made that with Greg on fresh tyres, that Will should just let him pass. And then maybe Greg will start trying to get past Stephen and help in Will's battle with Stephen. But of course, Will doesn't actually technically know, though it might be obvious the fact that Greg came out the pits, that Greg is a lap down, as Matt is now out of the race. Can't say I'm surprised to see that. Was this a simple mistake? Seems like he ran a bit wide, got on the gravel, on a one-way trip to the barrier from there. It's a very unusual place to make a mistake. We haven't seen anyone go off there in any of the lower races. But Matt finds a way. He is out of this race. It looked like it was inevitable, to be honest. Izzy has closed the gap to the leaders to under 4 seconds. And Will is less than a second behind Stephen. So, it's looking better and better for Tiamat. It's been a while since that team has won a race. And I would say they have a solid chance here. As Greg trying to get past Will again. Not going to be there. And this must be so frustrating for... If he had come up a few seconds ahead, then he could... Oh, he could have just used these fresh tyres to his advantage without being held up by cars that were on the lap ahead of him. But it's really not working out. Here is our Season 4 and Season 2 champion, Michael. Driving for the team he won those 2 championships with, of course. He's driven for a few other teams in his time in Formula 1. And it does look like things are looking better for him and Afonier than they were last season, though they're not really competing for wins like we would normally expect. Michael currently running 7.5 seconds off the lead. If he's got a lot of fuel in that car and he's one stopping, could be in contention, because we don't know how many stops the leaders are planning to make. I would assume 2, just based on the sheer pace that Stephen and Will seem to have. It'd be very impressive. 15 laps of fuel on board those cars, and they can lap these incredible lap times. But we'll see. These are 2 of the best drivers of all time in Formula I, Stephen and Will. Will's taken 2 championships. Stephen's narrowly missed out on like 4. Will this be the season that Stephen finally does it? Looking good. One last time. He's on to win this race. Well, if he can stay ahead of Will. There's a long way to go, of course. Too early to be making any predictions, as Greg still trying to get past Will. Here's the battle for 6th place. Alex in the Pentacoron against Kale, driving for Gotta Go Fast. Pentacoron is a much better car, but that Gotta Go Fast quick down the straights. Kale is managing to stay ahead. Kale has put that car in an incredible position, to be honest. And the fact he's still going, and he hasn't stopped yet, that makes it even better. It wasn't just a fluke based on a light starting fuel load. This is genuinely the pace of that car. And finally, Greg gets past Will into turn 1. So Greg has unlapped himself from one of the 2 leaders, as Rory's off for Red Leicester for the 3rd race running. Rory has crashed out, and it's like Rory is a driver that promised this season. He's got pole position in the first 2 races and was looking on to take an easy win at the times he crashed out. And here, well, it wasn't looking like he was one of the main contenders for winning the race. We were certainly well up in the top 5. And yet, out he goes, throwing away another good result. Let's see how it happens. As we've seen before, gets a bit wide, gets onto that curve, and that just sends you into the barrier. It's so easy to do if you just get a bit too much speed into one. But 3 times in a row, that's gotta be disappointing for that team. Their pace looks so good, and yet they're not getting the results to show for it. So it's Stephen who now leads by 1.8 seconds, as Greg seems to be letting Will back through. Or does Greg have some kind of problem? Let's have a look. No, it seems like perhaps, that's a strange one, isn't it? As Stephen and Will are coming into the pits. So that kind of solves that problem. Greg will now be released, though he seems to have been slowed up by those 2 coming into the pits, and Izzy has taken, well, she took the lead anyway, but moved ahead of Greg. So, Stephen and Will in the pits. Who's going to be out first? It's a 7.8 second stop from Will, which is not even close to being enough. Stephen in the pit lane. Stephen comes out just ahead of Lee. And Will comes out just behind Crystal, so that's not worked out at all well. Will has got 2 cars between him and his rival for this win. But out front is Izzy. She's made it 13 laps. Could Izzy possibly be on a one-stop strategy? Her pace has been very good if that's the case. She hasn't been losing time at all to the 2 leaders. I wouldn't be surprised to see her come in this lap, to be honest. But if she keeps going, then it's looking very promising for the Tiamat team, and Izzy is coming in. So that's not too surprising at all. Where is she going to be relative to Will? As Michael comes in as well. So, how quick is this pit stop going to be? 6.2. That's better than either Steven or Will did. Meanwhile, Michael in the F1 Izzy exits the pits. And she is ahead, or just behind Will, but ahead of Crystal. So the two Tiamats are in the same positions relative to each other that they were. As Izzy's on fresh tyres, Crystal comes through, takes 7th place. Of course, Crystal still yet to stop. Quite incredibly, Kale is our race leader for Gotta Go Fast. And if you had told me before this race that Kale would be leading, he's failed to qualify the first 2 races of the season. Here he is, out front. Of course, still yet to stop. But he's got that impressively far. He could be one-stopping here. And he's actually going longer than Alex. So Kale will start 15. And at the end of this lap, he will have made it halfway through this race. It's looking increasingly like Kale is a serious contender for this win. Of course, Steven is going to be coming at him on fresh tyres very quickly. And you've got to imagine Steven will find a way through. He's only 5 seconds behind Kale. But even so, Kale is in a very strong position in the Portuguese Grand Prix, as Lee comes out of the pits in 13th. Their teammate Callum is ahead of the 2 Frozen Light. I haven't seen that much of Frozen Light. I think they've made their pit stops. But even so, they're a quiet race. Both cars still running. That Frozen Light, of course, they had a double failure in Monaco, but they got both cars on the podium in Pasagada. Here, it looks like they're a bit further off the pace. Of the top 5. Let's see what kind of pit stop KO can do. Steven resumes the lead, 2.2 seconds ahead of Will. This is an important pit stop. Don't think Kale's favourite to win this race, but the fact that he has a chance at all is incredible. It's a nice stop from Kale, considering how much fuel he has to put in. Let's see if Crystal can do any better. And where is Kale going to come out? It looks like he will be in 6th place, just behind Hisham. As Greg in the Vanox has gone off. He was already a lap down, of course, but and that might well be a car failure because it does look like he parked it there. Mia in the pits, their 2nd stop. The first one was caused to repair damage. And Will continues to try and close down Steven. Izzy's fallen a bit back at this point. The gap is 10 seconds to the lead. This race is, I think, in my opinion, between Steven and Will and maybe Kale, but he would have to put up an incredible defense on old tyres towards the end of this race. Hisham still yet to stop. That's incredible. Kale is now over 20 seconds off the lead after being held up by Hisham. So that has hurt his chances here. But if Kale can finish on the podium, that would be completely unexpected. No one would have ever predicted that. To be honest, it was a surprise that he just made it up on the grid so far up. Izzy is quite rapidly losing time. She's now 13 seconds behind. And that makes me wonder whether Izzy is one-stopping. She pitted, I think, at the end of lap 13 or 14, which is feasible, to be honest. If the 2 cars in front have to pit again, and Izzy doesn't, then that's consistent with Izzy currently being over a second a lap off the pace. In which case, as Kale has pretty much dropped outside the pit window, it will be Izzy who leads this race, going into the closing stages, though of course, she will have very old tyres by then. So this is going to be an interesting one. Both Tiamats are still in this, and even if Izzy can't win this race, she might be able to hold up Steven enough that she puts Will in contention. As Crystal grinds to a halt, both Blue Bulls cars out of this race. A very disappointing result for them after such a promising start of the season. And that's not going to be... Karen's not going to be happy with that one. Yet another double retirement, as Steven seems to have gone off somewhere. Into turn 1, gets on that curve that we've seen send so many people into the wall. He gets away without damage. He loses the lead to Will. Will is now our race leader. And it is very much advantage Tiamat now, with Izzy in a strong position on a presumably one-stop strategy, and Will having the lead over Steven on the same strategy as Steven. It's looking like whatever strategy ends up being best, it will be Tiamat that come out on top, but there's still 10 laps to go. Alba in the pits, and the other Frozen Light has some kind of engine problem. Max's car is smoking. That doesn't look good at all. It's very rare that a problem like that would just clear itself up on its own, and Max's car has indeed caught fire. I don't think he's realised, because he's still driving it. He doesn't seem to realise that anything's wrong at all, to be honest. I wouldn't want to be staying in that car. It's got to be getting quite hot in there, as Will comes into the pits. Let's see how quick this pit stop can be. 6.9 seconds. It's exactly the same as what Kale did. And where will he be relative to Kale? Kale goes through. So Kale is net ahead of Will, with Will on much fresher tyres, and presumably a faster car. Though, with the incredible pace we've seen from Gotta Go Fast today, I'm not so sure about that. And Kale is seriously on for a potential podium here, because Steven is going to be well behind after that mistake. Though of course he will have very fresh tyres. Steven continues to go past 2/3 distance. Steven coming into the pits. And I think he will be out behind Alex, who I don't think has to stop again. So Steven's going to have a lot of cars to overtake if he wants to win this race. He might even be behind Keir. So, Izzy takes the lead, and I don't think she has to stop again. Izzy looking like the favourite to win this race. She's 14.8 ahead of Will. Will on very fresh tyres, of course. But Izzy's pace on heavier fuel loads seems to have been good enough to put her in a very strong position here. Michael, 3.3 behind. I think on the same strategy, given the very small pace difference between them. Kale in third. And Will very quickly closing up. The gap between Izzy and Will, 7.5 seconds. So that's definitely close enough for Michael to have enough time to catch up. The issue is that Michael has to overtake 2 cars in between him and the race leader. And as expected, Steven is out behind Alex. So if Steven wants to win this race, he has a lot of work to do. Of course, we saw Steven last time out win from 19th on the grid. So if anyone can do it, it's him. And Steven is in the slipstream, going down the start-finish straight of Alex, and this will surely be an easy move. Meanwhile, Will trying to get past Kale. Kale defends the outside. Will has the inside line and is surely ahead. And Will takes third place. So both Tiamats are again on the podium here at the Portuguese Grand Prix. And Steven has indeed passed Alex. It was presumably a fairly easy move, like it looked like it was going to be. Izzy continues to lead, now by 3.2 seconds ahead of Michael. I don't think Michael is catching quickly enough to challenge, but we'll see. Of course, Michael is going to have... Indeed, it doesn't seem like Michael is catching at all. Michael's going to have Will right behind him anytime soon. And the gap is down to 5.6 seconds, so Will is definitely quick enough to close down Izzy for the lead before this race is over. It's just a question of, can he make the overtakes on the track? When it comes to making overtakes on the track, You wouldn't bet against Will for being good at that. He's done it enough times before. This is turning into a very close race then. The top 5 all closing up on each other. And less than 8 seconds separating them. Any one of these drivers could win, though some are much more likely than others. I think definitely the 2 Tiamats are the obvious favourites. Will now only 4 seconds off the lead with 6 laps left to go. He needs to get past Michael, and he needs to get past Michael quickly. Of course, with the incredible pace that Will's putting in, he's going to risk burning out the tyres before he gets to Izzy. We've seen that before. So, Michael pulling alongside, or Will pulling alongside Michael, into turn 1, and Michael concedes the position. So it's a Tiamat 1-2 here for the 3rd race of the season. Izzy leading by just over 3 seconds. And Will is continuing to reduce that gap. I think he'll catch Izzy with 3 or 4 laps left to go in this race. So Stephen is off. That looks like a technical problem. It looks like Stephen has pulled off the track in that think again. That is such a disappointment because it really seemed... I thought that Stephen had a solid chance of getting back on the podium after that mistake. I think he would have got past Michael and Cale, but it's not meant to be. Was still we had in any of the lower races. Of course, it's much, so that's not too much of a surprise, but even so, 2 seconds now ahead of Will. So Will took that on that lap, or even slightly more than that. Just under 5 laps to go now. 4.5 to be precise, as they're halfway around the lap. And that's easily going to be enough time for Will to catch up. And meanwhile, behind, it seems like Cale is closing on Michael for that last podium position. This is, as I've said so many times before, this is an incredible drive from Cale. Probably, in my opinion, the best drive of his long Formula E career. And Will is now less than a second behind Izzy. And it may well be that with the sheer pace of Will, Izzy might concede the lead here. But I wouldn't be surprised if she fights it until the end. So as they go across the line, Will not quite close enough to challenge into turn 1. I expect, unless he finds a really good place to get through, as Izzy going wide into turn 3. No way around there. The obvious place to overtake someone here is down the start-finish straight. Everywhere else is very difficult. We'll see if Will can do it next lap. He might decide to go for an ambitious move somewhere else. It looks on the outside. There's no room there. And of course, the critical thing for these two is that they can't afford to hit each other. There are a lot of points at stake here for both of them. And if they end up both going out of the race, then the team management could not be more unhappy with. The gap is pretty much as small as it could be. Will is right in the slipstream of Izzy as they go onto the start-finish straight. He pulls alongside. Does Izzy's car have the power to stay ahead into turn 1? And it seems like Will will claim the inside of the corner and Izzy concedes the position. So Will is now our race leader. It remains a Tiamat 1-2. Michael for Afournier, 3rd place, a second ahead of Cale. 5th place is Alex for Pentacle. And here are the current standings of all 10 cars that are still running in this race. Is Greg still running? No. All 10 cars that are still running in this race. It's very close out the front. Everyone's a bit spread out further back. We've got a bit of a battle between Lee and Hisham going on. Hisham on fresher tyres after making a very late 1 stop. Freeman Meiji definitely not having the pace that we've seen from them in the first 2 races. Though, of course, Hisham never got to show it in the last race with that collision with Michael. But is Will out front, extending his lead with 2 laps to go. Here is that battle for 7th place then. Lee for Racing Disappoint, ahead of Hisham. And it doesn't look like Hisham's car has the power down this straight. He closes the gap down to 6/10. Lee easily far enough ahead that they don't need to worry about having to defend into turn 1, though they lock up quite badly into turn 3, and that's going to leave Hisham right on their tail. The gap now down to 4/10 of a second. These two pretty much started from the back of the grid. They haven't made any serious mistakes. They've kept it on the road, and that is why they're now in 7th and 8th. Good race from both of them, especially Lee. We would expect the Freemium IG to be better than this. Meanwhile, we have a battle for last of those that are running between Mia and Alba, neither of which are really having a good day. They'll be very happy with those points. So it's Will who leads this race as they go on to the final lap. Now 3 seconds ahead of Izzy. Izzy maintaining a safe gap back to the cars behind. And if nothing goes wrong for Tiamat, they will score a 1-2 finish. But still half a lap to go. It's not over until they've all crossed the line. They're in a very strong position right now, but they do need to not make any mistakes, have any car issues between now and then. That car has so far been pretty reliable this season. Will failed to qualify last race, and this race, he's going to win it. And it's Will's first win since Season 6, when he won the championship. 2nd place will be Izzy, making it a 1-2 for Tiamat. 3rd place, Michael for Affonier, back on the podium. And 4th, an incredible drive from Kale for Gotta Go Fast. If I'm not mistaken, that is his best result in Formula I. Certainly, with the quality of competition in Formula I these days, that is more impressive than any drive we've ever seen from him. 5th place, Alex in the Pentacoron. 6th is Keir, very strong drive for Ishtarmak. 7th Hisham, 8th Hisham, 7th Lee, 9th Mia, 10th Alba. So, an incredible result for Tiamat then. Not their first 1-2 finish, but no team has many of those, and definitely will be very happy to be back on the top step of the podium. It's been a while. Is this the start of a serious challenge for the championship for the Tiamat team? It wouldn't surprise me. This has been the Portuguese Grand Prix. Thank you all for watching. Goodbye.